Hello and welcome to another episode of the A-10 Insider Podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. It was another fun week in the world of Atlantic 10 basketball, Jeffrey. I think the headline here is George Mason, right? It's got to be George Mason knocking off VCU on Saturday afternoon to remain undefeated in the conference, to keep pace at the top of the league with the likes of Dayton and St. Louis in terms of undefeated records in that conference. So it looks like a kind of a clear-cut top three is emerging. VCU, we can talk about them here in a second, but what do you make of George Mason's win? And the fact that they're sitting here, they're the lone team right now as we sit here on Wednesday morning, January 14th, that is 5-0 in A-10 play.
Yeah, I mean, they just have balance. They have really good balance. And what Tony Skinn, we had him on earlier this season, what he's done with, pretty much a completely different team is remarkable. Riley Allenspach's been great. Corey Mincy's been really good. And they got another win earlier this week, against Loyola, where they were down. They were down a good portion of the game, came back and won that one on the road. So I think, again, they're kind of, not a huge surprise, but certainly a surprise only based on the fact that how much turnover they had to be undefeated at this point, to only have one loss in the season. But I think for the most part, yeah, you look at it and you say, all right, Mason, Dayton, St. Louis at the top of the league. No huge surprise. And then GW and VCU right there. The biggest surprise to me is St. Bonaventure right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're sitting there at 0-3 in the conference. Took a loss at home to Fordham on Saturday. A nice win there for Mike Magpayo. VCU is the one that I kind of want to talk about because I still think that this is, if you kind of look big picture, right, on how good the quality of the team is, I still think that they are a NCAA tournament team. Like if you were going to tell me to pick the 68 best teams in college basketball, I guess what would that be? The 36 best at-large candidates. I think VCU would be in that conversation. But they lost by 3 to Utah State. They lost by 6 to NC State. They lost by 3 to New Mexico. They lost by 9 to St. Louis. They lost by 6 at George Mason.
All quality losses. All
Yeah,
quality
and
losses.
they hung with Vanderbilt. They do have a really nice win over Virginia Tech, which they need to kind of have some legs.
Yeah.
But the end of their season, I think, is going to be extremely pivotal because they only get St. Louis once, and that's kind of oh no, I'm sorry, they have St. Louis on the road later on in the year. But in the last month of the season, you're Dayton at home, GW at home, at St. Louis, Mason at home, at Dayton. So you're gonna have
Yeah.
5 opportunities there to land yourself the kind of wins that you need to be able to get to the right side of the bubble. And frankly, I think that they probably need to win 2 or 3 of those to really give themselves a shot.
Yeah, I mean, again, you look at who they've lost to. Utah State's a tournament team. NC State probably a tournament team. Vandy's top 10. New
Mm-hmm.
Mexico could be a tournament team. What they probably need to do is beat St. Louis. Like that's the one that they probably have to win at St. Louis on February 20th. They already lost to them at home. Can they avenge that and get a Billikens team that right now the numbers are terrific? And, if there's one at-large candidate right now that you look at and you say has the best shot, to come out of the A-10, it's probably St. Louis right now, even over Mason because of their analytics.
Yeah, I don't think Mason is that far off, but Mason's going to have to. There's a little bit more wiggle room for St. Louis when it comes to the ability to get in if they take a bad one in league play, right? But they have a win at VCU, which is going to carry water. They have a win over Santa Clara, which is going to end up looking pretty good at the end of the day. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Let me ask you this: let's say Mason and St. Louis both head into Selection Sunday with 4 losses. They each take 2 more in the
Yeah.
regular season. I guess that would that mean they would both be 16-2 in A-10 play, and then they both lose at some point. And let's just say, for argument's sake, it's to VCU or GW or Dayton, one of the really good teams in the league, right? Is that enough to be able to get them to the dance? Those two.
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you because there's too many moving parts, Rob. So like you just have no idea at this point. with what's going to happen in these other leagues, right? The good thing is the Big East is clearly down right now. The SEC isn't what it was a year ago. The Big Ten is good, and they're going to get a bunch. And the ACC is much better than it has been in recent years. So it depends on how some of these other leagues shake out. And again, are there bid stealers in some of the other leagues where you look at a third team in the A-10 and you say, hey, they're in good shape, but it depends what happens in the other league tournaments.
I'm just glad that we have Jeff Goodman, college basketball expert, to come on here and say I have no idea when he's asked a question.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for our analytics insider,
Absolutely.
Jeff Goodman, for the expert analysis. No, I think the biggest thing is going to be, I don't think it's looking at the Big Ten as much as it's looking at where's the separation in the Big East going to come from. We talked about this last night on After Dark, but I think that there's a top 5 in the Big East that all are going to be in the mix for at-large bids. When it's all said and done. I think in the Mountain West, there's a top 3 that's going to be in the mix for at-large bids. How many do those get, right? Is George Mason going to have a better profile than, let's say, a Seton Hall or a Creighton? Is St. Louis going to have a better resume than either of those 2 teams? And I think that is what will determine how they do. The biggest thing you got to do if you're those teams, though, it's not just beat the other good teams in the league. Don't lose. Don't lose.
And part of it is. Part of it is, Rob, too, when you're playing some of these teams that are lower in the league, unfortunately, what you have to do, you got to run it up a little bit to get those numbers, to get that net in a place where committee members are going to look at that and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, they're in a spot where we need to absolutely look at them as an at-large. That's part of the deal right now. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that guys are running up instead of putting on walk-ons at the end of the game, but. For instance, if you've got, St. Louis, playing Fordham, on Wednesday night, if St. Louis is up 20 and you're Josh Schertz, you don't call off the dogs. You just don't these days. You make sure, if you're St. Louis, we're gonna make sure that our net is somewhere that you can't say no to us if we don't win the league tournament.
Yep, that's what you got to be able to do. So. That's where we are in college basketball right now. You got to run up the score, which is very sporting. And
I would run it up against you any day of the week, but
you wouldn't be able to, first and foremost.
You're old, you're fat, you're slow, you're one dimensional. You're a one trick pony.
Are you talking?
All you can do is shoot.
Are you talking to a mirror right now?
All you can do is shoot.
Are you talking to yourself? Are those your? Is that what you? Is that like your? What is it? Like your morning self-empowerment?
I am actually up. I'm actually the heaviest I've been in a while. Like I got to stop with the dessert.
Jeff, we can tell.
Yeah.
Listen, before this gets completely off the rails, we were joined by Javon Bennett today on the A-10 Insider Podcast to talk through Dayton's start to the season, his relationship with Anthony Grant, and how he was discovered by Merrimack head coach Joe Gallo. Let's get into that interview now. And now let me welcome on to the A-10 Insider Podcast, none other than Javon Bennett, Dayton star point guard, a guy that is averaging 16.5 points, 2.5 assists, and in the mix for the A-10 Player of the Year race for a Dayton team that is currently sitting at 13-4 and undefeated in the Atlantic 10 after last night's win at Duquesne. Javon, it's great to see you again, man. Appreciate you jumping back on.
Yeah, thank you
what's been the biggest catalyst to this kind of breakout season that you've had this year?
I would just say, my confidence, me being the older guy, being here, long, I know what's expected. I kind of know, what needs to be done. And, I know I'm going to get my shots. So, really this off season, I worked on the shots I was going to be able to get during the season. And, it's paying off right now. So, and having the confidence in myself.
What was the biggest adjustment with Anthony Grant? Because he's different than Joe Gallo, who played for Merrimack. What was that part that was kind of, listen, maybe you're fighting it early and now you've kind of figured it out?
No, yeah, coming in, I kind of knew the type of coach, Coach Grant was. He was kind of more stern, and he's not going to really yell at you, but he's going to, give you that little look to tell you.
He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to scare you, right?
Yeah, it's just the look he gives you that you did something wrong. But no, he came in and I kind of knew I was going to be the backup, so I had to learn a little bit from, the older guys that were there. And, like I said, me being here, the longest, like I said, I know what's expected and I know what Coach Grant wants and, what the team needs.
Emil Letang, you guys have he's been out here for about 4 games now, right? And
Yeah.
third leading scorer, one of your best front court pieces. And
Uh-huh.
you've won 4 games without him. How have you guys been able to kind of bridge this gap that you've had without him in the roster?
Yeah, I think, coach bring in guys that, are expected to play. You never know when your opportunity is about to come. And I think, us, preparing ourselves well, during the off season and even in practice, we got guys that are ready to step up. And, him going down, it opened up for opportunities for guys that, probably don't play as much. And, they've taken advantage of the opportunity and, hopefully we keep going. And when he gets back, he can just play right into the fold.
Have you learned any French yet to be able to yell at him when he's, maybe he sets the screen at the wrong angle or anything?
No, I try to stay away from the French. I'm not too good at it, but I'll still get on him a little bit.
So you're an Orlando kid that started your career at Merrimack.
Yep.
Um, Give me the story because Gallo, your former coach at Merrimack, told me the story a little bit. Give me
Yeah.
a little bit of the background of when they offered you a scholarship. Where
Uh-huh.
was it? How was it? And
Yeah.
what else did you have going on at that point?
Yeah, so he offered me my junior year, my junior summer. We had a tournament up in Philly and we didn't do too well. I think we went on 3. But the last game we played against Roselle Catholic and me and one other kid on the other team, I think his name was Simeon Wilcher. He
Yeah.
plays for Texas right now. But me and him were going at it. And we ended up losing. I had like 30 and he also had 30. I missed a game winning shot. And we're in a van, like getting ready to leave the game. And we just see this little dude like run across the street to the van. And he's like, he introduced himself, like he's like, yeah, you had a great game. Like, I really enjoyed watching you play. Then he said, I'm the head coach at Merrimack College, and we would love to offer you a scholarship and all like that. So it was a pretty cool score because you didn't think he was gonna come up there and run up to the car and do all that, but it was a pretty cool story. And our relationship grew after that. We had calls and I was able to visit and all that, so it worked out.
What was your first reaction? 5'6" guys aren't basketball coaches. Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, I didn't know. He was a short dude. I didn't know if he was playing with me. I don't know if he was like
Wait,
actually
you're
coaching.
calling somebody a short dude? Wait, it's not like you're like 6'7" here. Come on, man. What are we
He's a
doing?
little, he's a little shorter than me. He's a little
Yes, he
shorter than
is.
me. But it was pretty cool to see how he kind of, the effort he put in to get me, to go to the school. And, like I said, it worked out.
So this is I know this is a A-10 in a Dayton podcast, but I got to share a Joe Gallo story since we're talking about him. Merrimack
Yeah.
played in our opening day event this year, and Joey was wearing a quarter zip that was a little snug, shall we say, right? A little bit snug. And the
Uh-huh.
guys on the other side of the court during the game were sitting there yelling at him. They were like, "Coach, is that a small or a medium or a
Uh,
medium?" And really getting
yeah.
on him. And in the middle of the game, like he looks over at us while we're broadcasting, but their play-by-play guy is talking, and he just goes, "Hey man, I really like it when the fans at least are clever." And he's sitting there cracking up about these guys saying
Yeah.
he's got a shirt
Yeah.
that's a little bit too small for his physique these days.
Yeah, that's what we call a medium right there.
Yeah.
He wears plenty of mediums, no doubt. You
Well,
had a connection.
go ahead. Yeah,
You
you're
had
gonna ask the same
you
thing.
also had a connection to Dayton. I mean,
Yeah.
people. I don't know how many people know this, but obviously, you've known Ricardo Greer and his son
Hmm.
RJ for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So before he was at Dayton, he was a coach at UCF in Orlando, and his son played for my dad in AAU. So I was always around, Ricardo and his son, and I was able to work out a little bit at the UCF gym. So we always had that connection. And then once I entered the transfer portal for Merrimack, we kind of rekindled that connection and that relationship, and it kind of just grew from there. And that's kind of how I ended up at Dayton.
So, did you help? Did you when you helped recruit Jordan Durkak there, right? Coming from
Yes.
Merrimack as well. Has he lived up to your expectations as like
Hmm.
the priority recruiter? Like, are you? Is there when you're in those staff meetings with some of these other coaches, right?
Yeah.
Have they ever said like, you know what, man, maybe Jordan hasn't been living up to the expectations we had for him?
No, I think he's done a great job, just him coming from where he was at before. And, he's been dealing with a little bit of injuries this year
Mhm.
as well. But, I think he's done a great job helping the team and bringing a level of leadership, even though he's not been at Dayton, all his career, but him just playing basketball and college basketball long enough, he kind of brings, like I said, that level of leadership and that level of toughness to the group that we need, and hopefully we can repeat what we did at Merrimack here.
True. Yeah, you guys were really good. Really
Yeah.
good. Um, what's it been like to be in this role? Because
Uh,
my guess is you haven't been in this type of role since high school, right?
yeah, yeah. No, it's a great role to be in. That's kind of what everybody dreams to be in, a leadership role in college, and especially at the point guard level. That's kind of the next development I needed to be able to progress to where I wanted to be at. So, coach kind of gave me the keys to the team and told me that you're gonna have to bring, a level of leadership and kind of lead these guys in the direction that he wants us and where I want us to be at the end of the year. So. I think I've done a good job, just, getting
Mhm.
on guys when I need to and, telling them, they need to pick it up or whether the case may be on and off the court. So just having that, you know, that availability and that leadership is huge for this team.
Yeah, and it's paying off with wins over some big time opponents, right? You guys beat
Yep.
Marquette, you guys beat Dayton, you guys beat Florida State. Obviously, the win over GW last week is one that's going to carry some weight in the
Hmm.
A10 rankings. What has to let's spin this thing forward. What has to happen for you guys to continue winning games like this? And I mean, we know how good VCU is, we know how good
Yep.
St. Louis is, we know how good George Mason is. GW is not going anywhere. What
Yep.
has to happen for you guys to be able to continue this run and win an A10 championship?
I think we got to hang our hats on our defense. I think that's kind of what's going to be able to travel for us. That's what we hung our hats on all year. Defensively, we got guys that can, pressure full court and, we can make it hard for, opposing teams to bring up the ball and set up offense. So just hanging our hats on defense. And then obviously that creates offense for us, getting in transition. And, we got guys that can really flourish in transition. So just focusing on defense. And at the end of the day, just finding any way to win, like
Mhm.
right now, we don't have guys that are available, but we have enough. So just find a way to win.
How much fun is it to play in that arena for
Yeah,
those fans when you guys have it rolling? Because, people know, I mean, there's a reason they put the first four in Dayton.
for sure.
It's
For
about
sure.
as good of an environment and atmosphere and fan support as there is. I did these A10 job rankings recently,
Yeah.
and Dayton was number one for a reason.
No, yeah, it's no place, like Dayton, just going in there and, when you run out in the tunnel and you go out to the court and you just see 13,000, people, you can look up and you just see hands in the head and you can't even see their face. It's just a shadow, but it's always a great place to play. I feel like it helps us, when we're, maybe we're down and, the crowd is, get on their feet and starting to clap and, yelling and all that. It gives us energy. And then, I feel like it kind of scares the opponent team, a little bit to know that, we got so many people watching and, they might not be used to it at that point at the time.
Knowing what Anthony Grant has been through in recent seasons, right? And
Yeah,
knowing that this is his alma mater, and knowing that the team that he had when the tournament was canceled was capable of getting to a Final Four and winning a
for
national
sure.
championship. What would it mean to you guys on this roster if you were to be able to get back to the dance, if you were able to make a run, if you were to be able
Hmm.
to give him that experience and get into the
Yep.
second weekend of the tournament or get into the Final Four of the tournament?
Yeah, he talks about it all the time, him, playing here, and how much it means to him, coming back and coaching here. And, he kind of relays that message to the team. And, me being here, I'm kind of helping out with that message to the team that, each year the goal is to make it a March Madness and make some noise in March Madness. And obviously, we haven't been able to do that in the last couple of years. So we kind of, brought guys in that are going to help us do that. And we definitely want to win a A10 championship this year. We haven't done it in school history. So, we kind of want to, cement our legacy and, in the day in, history.
Best place to play on the road is where? Where's your favorite place to play?
I always like St. Louis. St. Louis is, one of my favorite places to play. It's just very hostile and, you know, it's always a packed house when we go over there. And, I love, when we go over there and we beat them and, they go home sad.
Is it much harder? We've talked to other, you kind of think it, and I'm not going to ask you to name names or where in the league or anywhere, but like, how much harder is it to get up for those types of games, Javon,
Uh-huh.
where you go and you're used to playing, like you said, in front of 13,000
Yep.
at
Yep.
home. Then you go somewhere and there's a couple thousand, and you got to bring your own energy. Is
Hmm.
that like how much tougher is that?
No, yeah, that's something you don't really talk about or you don't really see, when teams, go away, especially like us. And, that's kind of one thing I say before the game. Like I tell the guys, like we got to create our own agenda, our own, style. We got to impose our will. And I think we've done a good job. Even like last night against Duquesne. That wasn't really a packed out house, but it was a good game, and we found a way to win.
What's been the kind of the key for you guys this season to be able to make this run? You talked about their defense, your defense a little bit already, but
Mhm.
what's kind of been the key for some of the development of the younger guys? Like, how have you guys gotten to this point so far?
I would just say our chemistry is really good. We've been together since June, and we kind of know what to expect from each other. And I think we got guys that really care for each other and really want to see each other win. And I think that's like half the battle when you're trying to play college basketball. When you got guys all on the same page and want to complete one mission, one goal. It's really just the coaching at that point. And I feel like we got to get a great coaching staff that's helping us out and bringing guys in that are going to help us win.
All right. Well, listen, Javon, we appreciate you taking the time, my man.
Yeah.
Good luck here. You
Yep.
got four straight. You got to keep this thing going,
Yeah, got
and
to keep it going.
I'm repping the hat for you. So we'll
There
see
you
if you
go.
can keep this thing rolling. All right.
Yes, sir. I
Hey,
appreciate
good man.
y'all, man.
Circle it on your calendar right now. January 30th. You know what January 30th is, Javon? You get to pay a visit to your second favorite arena
There we
in the
go.
Atlantic 10,
Yeah.
Dayton at St. Louis. So we'll circle
That'll
that
be
one, man.
big.
It'll be a big one. It'll be a good game. Make sure you guys tune in for that one. Javon Bennett,